Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to the Corinne Bailey Rae music video, Stop Where You Are. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying the OCR A Level Media Studies specification, as it is currently one of the set texts on there. And in this video, I'm going to focus on media language and representation. The video starts with this kind of close-up on Corinne Bailey Rae's feet, very glamorous shoes as she walks in her high heels. And shots of kind of women's feet often tend to objectify them, and certainly with the high heels and the red dress that she's wearing, it does make her seem quite sexualized, which is going to appeal to a lot of audiences. The high heels, the red dress also make her seem quite powerful as well. We get lots of urban imagery here, so tall buildings, tower blocks, estates. It's quite grey and dirty and dingy, and we get lots of low angle shots looking up at the kind of small gaps in between the buildings. And this really creates this kind of idea of an urban city landscape. Of course, with all this kind of greys and blues of the city, her red dress really makes her stand out, and that gives her quite a lot of star power within the video. We see her approaching a young black girl kind of wearing a kind of blue hoodie, sitting on the floor. Some people say that this is just a person within a narrative. Some people say that this might represent her younger self. Either way, this person in blue seems quite weak, small and vulnerable. They're sitting on the floor, they're huddled over, they've got their hood up. It makes them seem quite isolated and lonely. She sits down with the girl in the blue, and you get this nice contrast between them, showing them as opposites, which I guess suggests that the young girl is quite insular, quite isolated, quite withdrawn, and Corinne is much more confident. Her comforting the girl in the blue hoodie really does make Corinne Bailey Rae seem quite maternal and caring and protective. We get a low angle of Corinne Bailey Rae here with lots of light around her head, which makes her feel very angelic. The lens flares and the slow motion really add to this kind of romanticised, angelic, almost religious view of Corinne Bailey Rae. We see a shot here, a very low shot, almost a worm's eye view shot of a bird flying through the sky between the buildings. And I guess this represents this idea of freedom in amongst this kind of urban prison. We get some shots here that are very easy to recognise as kind of a stereotypical gang. There's lots of people wearing hoodies, lots of angry, aggressive faces, some violence, aggression, shoving each other. So representing young people in quite a stereotypical way. Although perhaps challenging some gender stereotypes, we often think of urban gangs being male, whereas this being a female group perhaps shows that girls can be just as aggressive and gang-like as boys. We get this kind of very fast-paced shots of the girls running and chasing, and suddenly Corinne Bailey Rae sings the lyrics, "Stop Where You Are," and she puts her hands out, and everything goes into slow motion suddenly. And it's that change in the editing, as well as the visuals and the lyrics at the same time, that all combine to suggest that Corinne Bailey Rae is super powerful, that she's managed to stop this potential attack and ask people to kind of slow down and calm down, essentially. We see somebody who appears to maybe be homeless. They're sitting on the floor inside what kind of looks like a hallway or a stairwell of a tower block. The fact that they've got kind of dirty clothes on and things like that, again, adds to this idea that perhaps they're homeless. And we get the binary opposite here with the man walking past in a suit with a tie and a briefcase, which makes him seem quite wealthy and from an upper class. And the fact that this wealthy man in a suit just ignores this person as they walk by adds to this theme that sometimes we're not looking for people, we ignore people that are right in front of us. And perhaps emphasises this kind of gap, binary opposition between kind of wealthy classes and lower classes. Then, of course, we see Corinne Bailey Rae intervening, and the man comes back, offers the homeless person a drink, and they sit and they talk. And we get this two shot of them together, which makes it feel as though they're communicating and building a bond. We see some shots here of a man with lots of tattoos. He's got quite an aggressive looking dog on a lead. I think he's wearing a leather jacket. So kind of signifiers that really commonly tell us that he's a bad guy. Maybe he's aggressive, maybe he's involved in crime. And we get some shots of him kind of looking over his shoulder at Corinne Bailey Rae, and she looks over her shoulder, slightly worried, perhaps, reflecting this idea, this social, cultural, problem women have of being harassed on the street, being quite worried for their own safety, and perhaps also suggests there's an element of paranoia about this, because we then see the man hugging his dog, smiling, so perhaps seeing him as a more caring person here and subverting that impression that we initially got. So again, adding to these themes of us not judging people based on their appearances. Next, we see a very low angle shot of a man on top of a building. And because of how close he is to the edge, this could add to this idea of perhaps depression or even suicide. But then we see the shots of him starting to kind of dance and move, and he starts doing some sort of like parkour type acrobatics. So again, suggesting to us as an audience and to Corinne Bailey-Rae that perhaps she misjudged him at first. We get another man in a tunnel here. Seems quite scary because the low key lighting and all those shadows make it feel quite fearful. He's got a hoodie on to slightly mask his appearance. He's got dreads, he's not smiling. So perhaps, you know, audiences often respond to these stereotypes by thinking that there's something going to be bad about this person. You know, so it actually encourages us to think about our own first impressions of people and why we think these things. But we get some images of them dancing, showing this kind of idea of community and togetherness, and again challenging our ideas about what we initially thought about this man. When we see Corinne Bailey-Rae dancing with the man, she's stroking the dog, it suggests that she is a good person that has not made this perhaps the same assumptions as us as the audience, that she can see past these initial appearances, and that she is trying to be non-judgmental and embrace life and see the good things. There's some kind of religious imagery here as well. So there's images of her putting her hands up in the air, quite religious poses, lots of light around her. So this idea that she's worshipping or praying in some of the images. So it kind of adds this idea of maybe God or religion into the narrative. And that perhaps reflects the context of Corinne Bailey-Rae growing up in quite a religious background. She used to sing quite a lot within things like church choirs and groups. So the representation of people on this street and in this town, this city, is quite diverse in terms of gender and age and ethnicity. You know, there's a real mix of people which can appeal to an audience. You know, a lot of audiences like diversity, particularly when groups that are typically underrepresented in the media, for example, people from ethnic minorities, are shown in a more diverse, regular way in this music video. The environment itself seems quite imprisoning. It's quite closed in. There's lots of bars and, you know, kind of framing to make it feel very claustrophobic. So perhaps reflecting kind of street life, city life as being quite imprisoning and trapping people that live there. But us having and to see them as individuals, us being encouraged to see people as individuals and not just as stereotypes. There are lots of elements of realism within the video, you know, so it's quite a gritty scene. There's people who are homeless, you know, people who look weak, vulnerable, isolated, dirty settings, etc. So there are elements of kind of gritty realism, but there's also elements that are much more glamorous and escapist as well. So she looks very glamorous in comparison to this area, which maybe sets her apart a little bit and makes her seem like she's not quite part of this community, but that she wants to embrace it. So when Corinne Bailey-Rae was younger, she got married for the first time, and her first husband actually died of a drugs overdose. Obviously this was quite a shock. He was still very young, very tragic. And as a result, Corinne Bailey-Rae started writing a lot of music about embracing the small things in life, embracing joy, trying to look past the problems that we have and look past the bad things and actually see the good in people. And so that context of her life and her experiences is really reflected in the representations and the media language in this video. So that was my easy to understand guide to Corinne Bailey-Rae's Stop Where You Are. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos that might be relevant to you. And if you would like a video that I don't already have, just leave a little comment below and I'll see what I can do.